Once upon a time, there was a dragon, and this dragon's name was Inferno. Now, Inferno was 5 years old. Inferno was just about to start kindergarten. Now, Inferno was very excited. In Dragon Kindergarten, they get to play all sorts of great games, like tag and dress up, but everybody's favorite game was storm the castle or light the castle on fire. But there was one problem. On the first day of school, all the dragons go up to the front of the class and they breathe fire so they can play storm the castle. But Inferno couldn't breathe fire. So on that first day of class, all the dragons go in, go up to the front of the class and breathe fire, and Inferno takes a deep breath and blows nothing, not even hot air. But I'll get back to Inferno in a little while. I want to talk about the motivational fire that's in each one of you. That motivational fire that drives you to do things that maybe you didn't think you could do before. My motivational story starts in 1990. I was at the Empire State Games. The Empire State Games are an Olympic-type competition that New York used to hold. And they would invite all the best competitors, all the best athletes in the state. And I was a diver. So I went into the diving competition. I wasn't a big name in diving, but I had some really good dives. In fact, all my dives were pretty good, except for one. The reverse 2.5. The reverse 2.5 is where you jump forwards, you spin backwards 2 times, and then you go in upside down on your head, hopefully your hands. Now, this is a blind dive, so when you do this dive, you can't see where you are when you kick out. You have to kick out at exactly the right time. Earlier, I was training with the Olympic coach, Ron O'Brien, in Florida. And in Florida, I landed flat on my back so hard, it tore the skin on my back. And then in warm-ups, I landed flat on my back again. And so the competition started, and I was diving really well. In fact, I was in medal contention in the top 3. And I was about to go up for my reverse 2.5, and I decided I'm not going to do that again. And I went over to my coach, the region coach, and I asked her, can I take that dive out of my list? And she said, Cliff, you are not taking that dive out of your list. You are going to go up there and do that effing 2.5. And I was scared. I was more scared of her than I was of that reverse 2.5. So I climbed up the ladder, and I waited for them to announce the dive. As I waited, I visualized that dive in my head, but instead of visualizing myself landing on my back, I saw this clear picture of me going straight into the water without a splash. They announced my dive. I took a step. I could feel the cold board underneath my feet. The board was still wet from the divers that were ahead of me. I jumped into the air as high as I could. I started spinning backwards, pulling tight into my tuck. 1 time, 2 times, and then I realized I had to kick out at exactly the right time. If I kicked out too early, I'd be on my back again. If I kicked out too late, I'd be on my stomach. I kicked out and went into the water. And there I was, alone, in the warm, blue silence. I swam up to the top, and I could hear the crowds cheering. I could hear my teammates yelling. They were so excited. I didn't die. In fact, it was good enough for a bronze medal that day. But more important than winning any medal, I learned something so important, that motivational fire that you could gain from visualization, from focus, and from hard work. I didn't know how important that would be until 5 years later. I was at a doctor's appointment, and the doctor told me, Cliff, you have cancer. In fact, you just have a few months to live. And he said, you have 2 choices. You can wait out the last few months till the end, or you can get an experimental surgery that they're doing at NYU Medical Center. I went down to New York City, and I had the surgery. And here's the spoiler, I lived. But the surgery didn't turn out how I thought it was going to. After the surgery, I was paralyzed from the neck down. All the trauma and damage and scarring from the surgery had left me paralyzed. So began the long process of my rehabilitation. During the beginning, my therapist put me in a tilt table. They put you on the tilt table, and then they try to acclimate you to standing up to an upright position. When they did this, they tilted the table up 30 degrees. I threw up all over myself and emptied my bowels. Just a 30-degree tilt had caused all my organs to revolt. Not long after that, the doctors told me I would never walk again. But my therapist and my families never gave up on me. My family was a constant support, and my therapist kept on pushing me. As I continued to work, to focus, and visualize, my body slowly got stronger. My therapist put me in what's called parallel bars, and 4 therapists helped me walk through these parallel bars. Now, 2 of them were holding up my upper body, and 2 of them were shifting my legs forward. At the end of the experience, everyone is exhausted. My therapists were much more exhausted than I was. And then I thought, how am I going to be able to walk? It takes 4 people to get me through these parallel bars. How am I ever going to be able to do it? But again, my family never gave up on me. My therapist never gave up on me. I started to visualize and see the picture of my leg lifting and moving, my leg lifting and moving over and over again. That was it. I had seen what I could do. The motivational fire started to build up inside of me again, and I worked harder than ever. And then after many more months of therapy and work and focus and visualization, my foot shuffled forward. I had learned how to walk. But now I can swagger. That motivational fire carried me to a place where I didn't think I would go. Now, as a coach, I get to work with some amazing athletes. And I can share that fire with them. About 5 years ago, we had a diver come in, and his name was Alex, and he was a shy, timid diver. Whenever we gave Alex just the basic, simple skills, he had trouble with it, and he would always shut down and not be able to do any more. And he was quiet, and he was always scared of these next skills. But I kept on working with him, kept on challenging him, and like all my athletes, I kept on pushing him to the next step. Eventually, Alex began to have confidence in himself and be able to get that fire inside of him. He learned, and he continued to grow, and just a few months ago, he learned that reverse 2.5. He put that reverse 2.5 in his diving list at the New York State Championships. He hit that reverse 2.5, and he won the state championships as a sophomore. One of the youngest divers ever in the history of New York to win the New York State Diving Championships. It is such a great feeling to be able to take that fire and be able to share it with those you really care about. Now, back to Inferno. Inferno came home from school, and he was sad, and he was dejected. And his dad came up and said, "Inferno, what's wrong? I can't breathe fire. Nobody likes me, and I don't want to go back to school tomorrow." And Inferno's dad said, "Inferno, don't worry. You'll find your fire. But remember, the fire comes from your gut." Inferno stayed up late that night, breathing in and breathing deep from his lungs, and then finally it got down to his belly, and he started to feel his belly warm up. And then just before the sun rose, he breathed some sparks and then smoke, and then just before school, he shot a flash of flame that came out of his mouth. He went to school that day, and at school, he breathed a fireball so big, he singed the front of the desks of all the other dragons. And that afternoon, he was able to play Storm the Castle. Now, to all of you, find that fire inside of yourselves. And then, when you find that fire, share it with those who you care about. Thank you very much.